I liked what you said about like reprogramming the way that you think about yourself. I think that's like a huge part of it, is just having like those messages, those negative messages we have about ourselves are very often, they started when we were like really small children. And so they're so hard to reprogram. And I think that's why having someone like Chris in my life has been so powerful, because I've now been married to him for 12 years and he's just never wavered.
You're an influencer.
Yes.
You have 146-ish.
Yeah, around
thousand followers.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long have you had that big of an audience?
I basically from the beginning.
Which was when?
I started about 9 years ago.
Wow.
When my oldest was a baby. So it was like back before influencing was even a thing. I didn't even know what influencing was when I started posting on Instagram. But I had a bunch of my posts go viral, and then I had brands offer to pay me to post. And I was like, this seems like a cool gig. I could do this.
Were you leery at first? Like, wait, you're really going to pay me? Is this just like one of those telemarketer like messages?
It was, the platforms that reached out to me were like pretty official looking. And it was bigger brands. Like I worked with Old Navy was my very first brand that I ever worked with. So it seemed really legitimate, but I was just like mind blown that people wanted to pay me to do something that I was already doing and that I loved doing. So that part of it, I guess I was a little, but not leery, but surprised about.
That's really cool. I mean, really. So as soon as you had your account, it was probably created, you just had your account that you always used, and then started posting things that people took notice of. And very quickly you had followers organically. You didn't buy any of them.
No. Yeah.
And
yeah,
well, that's a thing. And I didn't think that about you. I knew that they were organic. But then you started getting people asking you if they could start paying you to highlight their content, highlight their merchandise.
Yeah. And I actually it wasn't like a personal account that I had already had going or anything. I didn't even know what Instagram was, but I really, really liked singing. And I was a stay-at-home mom, and I thought, I want to share my singing. And I don't know. I was very sheltered. I like literally didn't even know. My first Instagram post, I posted it and I thought it was like my own photo album that nobody could see. So I thought I was I didn't even understand that it was a social media platform. And then I saw one of my friends from college who was also a singer posted a song and said #15-second cover. And I was like, I could sing for 15 seconds. I think I could post a 15-second cover. And when you post on Instagram, other people can see it. So I started. At that point, then I created an account just to share my music, and it was my singing that went viral.
Okay, I'm going to have to scroll back on your page and listen to some of your songs. I didn't even know
I've
that.
removed a lot of the music because it's not my niche anymore. It's not something I love doing as much anymore. I think it's something that I was like kind of pushed into from when I was really, really young. Like my parents told me I was interested in singing. So I started that. That's how I got attention. And then I stopped, and it's not really.
Not your thing. It was something you
it's not
thought
my thing
was.
anymore.
You were told it
yes.
was. Oh, that's so interesting. Okay. So now this would make you an influencer for how many years?
About 9 years.
9 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Coming on 10 years. Because I remember it was like around my daughter's first birthday when I set up my page.
You have 2 kids, right?
3.
3. Okay.
Yes.
I remember 2 from the Halloween party.
Yeah.
With Cody.
Yeah, because I think my 2 daughters kept like coming up to you.
And taking my butterflies.
Yes.
I was a butterfly.
They still remember. I told them I'm
sweet.
going to do a podcast with the butterfly lady, and they knew exactly who I was talking about.
I love it. That's so cute. Okay. It's a full-time job.
Yes.
So tell me about it, because people just literally don't know, and I don't either. And I, just in my profession, I realized that some things just take so much longer than you think they do. For me, one Canva design is like 2 hours. I can't imagine setting a stage for the whole thing. So describe to us.
Yeah, and the process starts like even way before like setting up the content, because you have to pitch to brands. And for me, it's like for every 10 pitches that I send out, one of those will turn into a job. And then after you pitch and the brand hires you, then you have to send them your creative pitch and they have to approve your creative pitch. And then you have to create the content based on that and then send them the content and they have to approve the content or not approve it. Lots of times there's like little changes and tweaks that they'll have you do. And then obviously share it. And then there's like all the really boring stuff like invoicing and sending them all the metrics. But it's like a really long process. It's not just...
So you do the admin part, the bookkeeping part, the editing part.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of behind the scenes. Wow.
Yeah.
And what are some of your favorite brands?
Into one post.
I can see. I like your posts though. I love some of the ones that you do of your table. It's so pretty with all of, like, I think I saw an Easter one or a birthday one a couple months ago. And
I've been doing I have a friend who's also an influencer who does she does food. So we've kind of like combined my lifestyle and her food, and she'll like make beautiful food and I'll set up the table. And so that's what you've been seeing is us combining our strengths in influencing, I guess. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about Rachel before she was an influencer, before she was a mom and married in college. Let's go back as far as you'd like and tell me about as much of your life as you're willing to share.
Okay. I am the oldest of 8 kids, and I grew up very, very strict Mormon and homeschooled. So I kind of grew up in a bubble. Growing up, like we only could have Mormon friends, basically. And I don't think I gained like a really good worldview or grasp of like the world that I live in because I was so sheltered growing up. So yeah, I was homeschooled at 17. I went to college.
Where'd you go?
Pardon?
Where'd you go to college?
I went to BYU Hawaii.
Oh, so were you born in Utah?
No, I grew up in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're born in Canada.
I was born in Alberta. I grew up in Vancouver area. It's a little island called Salt Spring Island.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then from there you went to college?
Yes, I went to college when I was 17. I graduated with a degree in music because that's what I was told I was interested in.
Wow.
And me and my husband were best friends for a long time. He went to church with me on the island that I grew up on. So that's how we got together, is because we had just known each other for forever. So right as I was coming to graduation, we got married. And then we moved to Idaho where he started school, and we had our first baby. And that's when I started influencing.
In Idaho. And then you moved from Idaho to
Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And then you moved from Pennsylvania to
Here.
Yeah. Okay. Had you visited Utah, St. George area a lot prior to moving here? Yeah.
My parents lived here for 5 years before we moved here. So we had visited a lot, and we just like fell in love with the mountains and the weather.
Oh. Yeah, no, it's great here. So I moved here knowing literally not a single person in St. George.
That's how we were.
I visited 3 times, and it was quickly like, wow, I never even planned on visiting St. George, but I did know one person who lived in Cedar Hatch area. And so I came and I visited, and I was like, I probably would have never even visited St. George in my life had somebody else not like said, hey, come to visit. Right.
Yeah.
And I was hooked.
Yeah. I would have never thought of it.
Yeah.
And actually, that reminds me, the first time I came to St. George was actually when I was pregnant with my first daughter. And we came in the middle of summer and I was like 8 months pregnant. And I thought it was like a living hell because it was so hot. And we were staying with friends and they didn't have the AC on enough. And I was dying the entire time. So then coming back to St. George, like years and years later after I had my kids, I'm like, oh, this place isn't actually hell. I really like this place.
I was scarred that one time. It had set a mark in my brain.
Yeah.
Like, you do not like that place.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I know. AC is important here.
Especially when you're 8 months pregnant.
Yes. You should
in the middle of
be
summer?
in the water, in the AC. I mean,
Yes,
for sure.
I was dying.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my. We've had a pretty warm summer, but it feels like the entire year is wonderful. And then we have like 4 or so weeks that can be brutally hot.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of 4 weeks, it's amazing.
Yes.
I mean, the winters are so mild.
So nice.
Yeah,
I don't miss the snow at all.
No, I don't either. I'll go there for like, I go there to take one for the team. If it's like Christmas or, you know what I mean?
You're originally from California though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll go snow ski and things like that, but okay, so your mom and dad live here.
No, they did.
Oh, okay.
And that's why we visited a lot.
Okay.
We thought we were coming to move close to them, and they left like 3 months before we got here.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what about all your siblings?
They're all over. I have a sister and brother who are in different parts of Texas. I have one in Idaho. I have 2 siblings still living at home. I have one in Europe somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where he is, but they're all over.
Okay. So tell me, the good, the bad, how was it growing up, in your household? We have all got our story. I'm sure, I don't know if you've listened to mine or not, but it's pretty shocking.
I listened to like bits and pieces. I was impressed. And
it's like halfway through, you're like, oh, wait, what? Did I hear that right? She was a crystal meth cook. Like just even my brother, I saw him recently and I had sent it to him and he didn't know. And he came and visited a couple of weeks ago and I go, yeah, I just can't believe like for the first time, it's been 20 years that I told people I was addicted to drugs for 13 years and I cooked crystal meth. He goes, what? I go, oh, so you didn't listen to the whole thing? I'm like, okay, well, anyway, so tell me some of the things that you've had to go through in life that have been major lessons for you that have made you who you are today. And you can start anywhere. It can be a story. It can be like however you want to share and whatever you want to share.
Yeah.
And it can be a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm just
Deciding
thinking of like where to even start. I think like the reason that I mentioned being homeschooled and Mormon is because I think that informed a lot of my life path and the decisions that I made. And it also has informed like who I am right now because I've broken out of the box that I was kind of put in from, not just put in, like forced into from when I was a very, very young child. So my parents were really, really, really strict. And to the point where I would say it was emotional abuse because we just, I don't want to speak for my siblings. I'll just speak for myself. I just felt like I was never, ever good enough. And there was just so much pressure put on me from a very young age to be perfect. And I felt like the love that I received was very conditional. And because of that, I feel like I came into adulthood with extremely low self-esteem and extremely low self-love. Sorry.
It's okay. And this is so good for people to hear because when people see you on Instagram, that's going to be the last thing that they even would have believed. You know what I mean? Like we see you, you're beautiful, you shine, you're smart, you're obviously so intelligent, like the way you speak so eloquently, and you take your time and you think about the words you're going to use. And
yeah, and that's like not how I perceive myself at all. I'm starting to see myself in a much more loving light, but coming into adulthood, I just had extremely low self-esteem. So I think things really started to shift for me when my parents adopted my brother, who's just younger than me. He's 6 months younger than me, and I was 14 years old when we adopted him, and I love him to pieces. I'm so glad he's a part of our lives. But when my parents adopted him, I already didn't have a good relationship with my parents, and they replaced me with him. So I felt like my parents that I already didn't feel seen or loved by now were replacing me with a new sibling who was very charismatic and very cool. And like all my girlfriends had crushes on him. Like I felt like my friends wanted to be friends with me so they could spend time around him. And I love him. I love these qualities about him. Nothing negative to say about him at all. But the way that my parents
handled it
was very, very hard. And at that point in my life, I didn't even know like what self-harm was at that point in my life, but I started fantasizing about it in my own way from pretty much every single day. I would go in my room and cry, be super depressed, and fantasize about hurting myself because I thought maybe if I hurt myself bad enough that my parents would have to pay attention to me and have to love me. And I remember once even telling my mom, like, I can't stop thinking about suicide. And she said to me, "You're being so dramatic." Meanwhile, my adopted brother is getting all the therapy that he wants because he had a real hard life growing up. So she kind of used him to also invalidate my own emotional turmoil that I was going through. So I had a really, really bad depression. And I think that is part of what led me to, at 17, I'm like, I'm going to college. I need to like create my own space. So I went.
You were discounted quite a bit, weren't you?
Yeah.
Like your emotions were discounted. Even the words that you were speaking were used and turned against you.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't imagine if my child came to me and said, like, I've been thinking about suicide, and I called them a drama queen. Like that is just, so I don't know.
Especially when you're truly like dealing with.
I was struggling. Like I felt like I didn't matter at all. And that's like a really heavy thing I was 16 when I told my mom that. That's a really, really heavy thing for a 16-year-old to carry. I was like terrified because I was like, what if I accidentally do something? And then maybe there was a way that I remember thinking, maybe there's a way that I could get better and not feel like this. But what if I don't figure that out and I hurt myself or.
Yeah. Yeah. I have lived with depression for like over a decade. And so I know what that feels like. If you don't know what depression feels like, it's hard for you to imagine it, but it is a real thing.
Yeah.
It's not something that we can just snap out of.
Yeah. And I mean, it's something that like, because I don't know if it's because I started experiencing it so young, but even to this day, like I'll go into stages of depression and I have so many good tools to deal with that now. So it's okay. Like I can get through it. And I also recognize it and say, I'm not like a bad person because I feel this way right now. So I can come at it from a way healthier place. But yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, for me as a 16-year-old, that was really, really heavy and hard for me to carry without like the support of anyone around me. So I went to college. And my now husband asked me to date him, and I said no. And then I started dating someone who is very similar to my parents, who's emotionally abusive. And that like ripped my self-esteem to shreds. I remember him telling me that if I left him, no one else would ever love me. And I believed him. And it like, I feel so sad for myself at 18 years old when I was dating him that I like actually believed someone telling me no one will ever love you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't talk about this stuff without getting emotional.
No, the tears are real and it's totally acceptable. I actually appreciate that you're letting your full emotion get into this because, I mean, this is like, you know, people buy books and these are page turners and this is just them being able to see it in real life. And no, there's so many people out there that have similar or different or struggles that they go through and they're thinking in their heart, oh my gosh, somebody out there,
that's
you know,
like
gets it.
The reason that I'm so vulnerable on social media, like about my mental health stuff, because that has made such a difference to me when I've heard other people tell their stories. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not alone. Someone else has experienced this. But the reason I mentioned him is because he wanted me to marry him and I didn't feel comfortable about it. And
the abusive boyfriend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The emotionally abusive boyfriend. Thank you. So he suggested I talk to my bishop, and I talked to my bishop about it. And the concern I had was this boyfriend would ask people out. Like while we were talking about marriage, if we got in a fight, he'd go ask another girl out on a date. So I was like, I feel like this might be a sign of future cheating. I'm not sure. I told my bishop about it and he's like, oh no, it's fine. It's just because you're not having sex yet. So he's not going to do that when you're married and having sex, because obviously you're going to wait.
Which is not always the case. Like
you're supposed to in Mormonism, but it's definitely not always the case. So I was like, I feel like something feels off about this. This doesn't feel like good advice. So I went and talked to a therapist. And that's why I brought this whole story up, is because I feel like that was the turning point in my life when I went and sat down with a therapist and they explained to me the cycle of abuse. And no one had ever explained to me the cycle of abuse before. And I'm like mind blown, because I'm like, you're describing the pattern of our relationship and
the pattern of the relationship I went through with my parents.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't realize it was my parents as well till later, but yes, definitely the pattern of the relationship with my parents as well. And that gave me the courage to break up with him. And then me and my now husband started talking again.
He is such a cutie, by the way. He's such a good dad too. Like
he is.
I really enjoyed the times that we've been around each other and that I've gotten to know your family. And I can tell that, you know, you have a lot of love there.
That was like such a pivotal moment for me, because I feel like it could have gone either way. I could have not gone to the therapist because I knew my mom was disappointed that I went to a therapist, because only crazy people need to do that. And I could have listened to the bishop and I could have married this guy who would have for sure just continued the pattern of abuse. And I'm sure it would have just gotten worse and worse. But instead, I chose Chris, my husband, and he's just such a good man. And I feel like having such a good, stable person in my life has also been a huge part of my healing and me realizing like I deserve to love myself the way that my husband loves me. I deserve to see myself the way that my husband sees me. And that has been so helpful and supportive for me on my healing journey.
Do you feel that because I almost feel like I know the answer for myself, for Heath and I, it's the same. I wish I loved myself as much as he loves me. Like I am recovering because he is a constant reassurance. He says things to me so often now that I've reprogrammed the tapes.
Yeah.
That needed reprogramming a long time ago. And I'm a new person, and I still at moments know that he loves me. Like last night, I even said, I went to bed and I said, I just don't love me the way you love me. It's just, this is me being difficult can sometimes be
put it on.
Mostly because, you know,
you don't see yourself the way that
sometimes I just don't even have love in my heart, and it's not for him or any, you know, it's for myself. Sometimes I find myself just to be so ugly and repulsive, and I don't mean by looks. just the what's
Same.
coming out. I'm like,
Same.
gosh, you know. And so how do you feel like he's brought this out in you? You're starting to see yourself the way he sees you. Is it done? Like, do you see yourself the way he sees you? Or is there always just a little, or sometimes a little bit like you still regress at moments?
There's definitely moments that I regress.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's a process.
But I'm definitely seeing a shift to where it's a lot more, I'll stay in a good headspace.
Yeah.
Like the percentage is leaning more towards that. But that also has been like a lot of therapy too. I've done therapy for a couple years, and that has really helped. I liked what you said about like reprogramming the way that you think about yourself. I think that's like a huge part of it, is just having like those messages, those negative messages we have about ourselves are very often, they started when we were like really small children. And so they're so hard to reprogram. And I think that's why having someone like Chris in my life has been so powerful, because I've now been married to him for 12 years and he's just never wavered on to him. I'm like, and I feel like I 1000% believe him when he says like, I am the most beautiful person in the world. I'm the person that he loves more than anyone. And I'm like, I have no idea why. I feel like I'm very annoying and very difficult, but I believe him when he says that. And hearing that for 12 years, it does help change the way that I feel about myself. But the most powerful change though is just me actually changing those messages for myself, like changing the things I say to
program
myself.
our minds.
Yeah.
And whatever you tell yourself, you believe. Your brain and your mind is the strongest thing we have. If I tell myself, you know, that I'm the Queen of England every day for a month, I will feel and act. Yes. Like, you know, that's not something I would ever say, but
my 5-year-old thinks she's a bunny and that she can speak to her stuffies, and she like truly believes that with all of her heart.
I just love that. I'm going to come up with some new stories for myself, but yeah, I mean, I have had to reprogram my behavior with food, my behavior looking at my body, how I told myself, you know, how I talked to myself and treated myself.
Yeah.
And that takes years.
Yes. I like, even today I made myself a meal before coming to this, because if I get anxious, lots of times I won't eat. And so to me, I have to plan to eat if I'm anxious. So I made myself a meal before like getting ready to record with you. And as I was making this meal, I remembered that I used to feel so guilty when I would make food for myself and take that time to really care for myself. And I don't feel that anymore. And that is like, I remember when I was specifically going through that area of my life with my therapist, I thought there would never be a point in my life that I would make food for myself and not feel guilty about it.
Wow.
But she told me, she always tells me, think of 3 positive things you can say to yourself, positive messages you want to give to yourself in this department. And for me, it was, I deserve to nourish my body. I deserve to take time to eat. And I don't remember what the third one was. And saying those messages to myself for a year. And now it's like not even a thing. Like, I know I deserve to take time to make myself food. That's not even a question.
But back then you didn't.
Yeah.
And you've had to reprogram. They say if you've been telling yourself something for like, let's say 5 years, it takes 2.5 years for you to talk yourself back to that middle ground, to where it's not necessarily, you still remember. We look back to remember, but we don't look back to go backwards. But you looked back on that today as you made yourself a meal, preparing yourself for this time here that could possibly get emotional, and you're thinking about a lot of things, and you're
deserve to nourish my body.
Yes, absolutely. How are we supposed to serve if we can't be strong enough? And it's the same. We have kids. We have to take care of ourselves so we can take care of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
We have to be healthy mentally so they can be healthy mentally. I don't think that your mom was like running around in diapers, starting to walk and getting older, first, second, third grade, going, oh, when I grow up, I want to really screw my kids up.
Yeah, I want to make fun of them for eating.
I'm going to make sure if they can't do what I tell them to, I'm going to adopt a kid and say, here's the one you should have been like. I mean, not that she did those things. Like kind of manifests into these things because she can't control your mind. She can reassure you and love you, and every child is an individual. And
that's what I was kind of talking about at the beginning. Like, I think we all go through trauma, and I think my parents went through a lot to have made the choices that they did in parenting. But rather than learning to take feedback and make meaningful change and self-reflect on like how your trauma informed your decisions, you can't have any growth if you're not willing to do that.
Yeah. Growth is an interesting part of life because I feel like you can never stop in that department. No. I mean, I feel like you should always want to be growing.
Yeah.
Every year of our kids' life, things changed. Like from birth until they were out of the house, every year was different. And for me, I had to grow through those moments to know how to be a parent to them in that moment. So you have to keep educating yourself constantly. And the way things were when you were 12 years old compared to when, your daughter or son when they're 12, it's going to be different. You can't just rely on those tools had you been raised in a healthy environment. They're going to always be new based on what our society is like.
It's true. And like each of your kids is so different too. I feel like I have to be a different parent for each of my 3 kids almost because they all have different ways of connecting and different needs. And so, it definitely takes a lot of being a parent specifically, takes a lot of willingness to grow.
It's a lot. Being a parent is, and sometimes I find myself saying, oh, what's your career? What do you do? Or are you a stay-at-home mom? And I have been a stay-at-home mom, well, kind of. And that was so much harder than getting up and going to any job could ever be, where you can actually like think about something else. But being a stay-at-home mom or raising kids, particularly, even with support, I didn't have support, but with support, it's even extremely difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And different times of their life, one will be more difficult than the other, and it might be outside influences, girls especially, other girls are hard on other girls. It's just, I don't know what, it seems innate. But when I moved to Utah 3 years ago, I was 50 when I moved here. So 3.5 years ago.
You don't even look 50 now.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I did move here at age 50. It helps me calculate how long I've been here. Now I'm 53 and a half. So I didn't know what Mormon church was. I just know there's Catholic, Christians, Mormon. There's just a lot of religions. And I figure they all have different little differences. And, they've come and knock on my door when I was in California. And I had no idea. So I've learned a lot about the Mormon community. Almost all of my girlfriends have been raised Mormon. Almost all of Heath's. I mean, a lot of the Mormon families raised Heath. My boyfriend, because
is Heath Mormon?
No, well, no, he did go through the church and he did go through the temple and do the whole thing at age 30. But no, not at this time. Their family is no longer in the church. They got an attorney and. Had to.
Yes. I haven't done that yet, but I plan to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So when I came to Utah, I felt like I had never met so many nice people.
Yeah.
And it's so clean. There's no litter. There's no graffiti. I felt like I lost my purse several times and they held it for me at different places. Or one time
that is nice. I always put my phone down on the shelf when I'm shopping and then forget about it. Same thing. It's just there when I go back.
Or you go to Lost and Found and there's your wallet full of cash.
Yeah.
It's bizarre to me. But I've learned a lot about some of the things from, our friends and close friends, and it's just interesting to know, like, I didn't realize that they didn't believe in dinosaurs, or that, they were blasted here, and that they can't drink coffee, but they can have soda.
Yes.
Just little things that were surprising to me. And then, of course, I've looked at YouTube now, and I'm like, okay. And I know there's somewhere in the middle, but the people are all so amazing.
That's what I was going to say. Like, when I do say negative things about the church on my page, sometimes based on my own experiences, but I think the people are really, really, really good people. Like, I think, and I was in the church for 30 years, I think Mormons are actually trying to be their best, most authentic, loving, service-oriented selves, but I have problems with the organization, and I also don't necessarily think it's true. So those are my reasons for leaving, is that I have a lot of issues with the organization itself.
Yeah, I feel like some of their beliefs can be fact checked.
Yes.
But with that said, and I don't know about the garments, because I don't think I could wear a bra over the garments with my clothes on.
Ugh.
That would be a little hard. And I've talked to plenty
I wore them for 8 years.
Okay. Yeah. That's
yeah.
It couldn't have been easy with some outfits.
No. And also, like, it's not sexy either to wear.
Not that
like,
that's all that we're looking for, but
of course not to like share too much information,
good.
But like, no, yeah, exactly. To wear like a full t-shirt and shorts to bed. And also, I'm very small. And the garments have like these big breast pockets sewn in. So like I'm coming to bed with like fabric, like boob sacks hanging on my shirt, basically. I don't know how else to describe it. Yeah, I wore those for 8 years.
It's so interesting to me. I've actually had never anybody describe them to me to that degree. I've only seen them on like in
they
like
have tighter ones as well, but I couldn't sleep in those.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, that's the most I've ever gotten at. It's
I also like, I am anxious. I get anxious from like physical things, like if my clothes are too tight or my bra is too tight. So wearing garments was such an anxiety trigger for me. Like, it made my anxiety so much worse. And I didn't even know when I started wearing garments that some people's anxiety could be triggered by physical irritants. But I definitely learned that makes a huge difference in my anxiety. I'm like even a more patient mom when I am not wearing my garments, because I'm not like feeling like I'm going to crawl out of my skin. Yes. But taking them off was so hard for me, even with like when I started to realize it was causing me anxiety. I was having other physical issues that it was causing me that were super painful.
Stress is one of the biggest, like, the hardest on our health.
Yes. So because of all those reasons,
guilt?
Yes. So because of all those reasons, I decided to take them off, but I was still like a true believing Mormon at that time. And so I felt so much guilt about it. You always like hear in the church that like the Mormon pioneers like literally sacrificed their lives for this religion. So in my mind, I'm like, they sacrificed their lives, and I can't wear like my underwear. Like, that's a pretty small sacrifice that I'm having to make. So I felt extreme guilt for taking them off. But
what about your husband? Did he wear them for a certain amount of time?
He kept wearing them even after we left the church.
Okay.
And at some point I was like, Chris, can I get rid of these? They're like triggering to me. I don't like seeing them. And he was like, oh yeah, I don't know. I was just wearing them because they're there. Because the men's are basically like how men's underwear are.
Like a t-shirt and boxers.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like not a big, it wasn't.
And it was that easy for him? He's like, oh yeah.
He was like, oh yeah, I was wearing them because they were there.
Out of habit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And you're like, wow, why didn't I say something sooner?
Yeah.
Didn't know it was going to be that easy.
Yes.
He sounds such a great guy.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so I went over the coffee, the caffeine. Those are the things that I was like.
That was like a big turning point for me in leaving the church. I decided to try a Moscow Mule. That was my first drink ever.
So like an alcoholic drink.
Yes. And I
you're
was
not
like,
allowed to drink alcohol.
No, that is like really, really bad. You cannot have a temple recommend. And if you don't have a temple recommend, you can't go to the celestial kingdom, which is like the highest. It's like heaven for Mormons.
Okay.
Basically. So I thought I'm going to try it because I want to make this decision for myself if alcohol is evil. And I had done a lot of therapy to that point, and I trusted myself to be able to make a decision whether something was good or evil, essentially. Yeah. So I thought I can repent later. If I decide this is evil, I'll repent. And I tried it, and I don't feel like an evil person. Like, I just don't feel like God cares that I had this Moscow Mule. I really don't.
Yeah.
So something's not adding up here. Like, people have been telling me my whole life that this is evil. This is bad. It's going to destroy your life. You're not going to make it to heaven if you drink this, for sure. And I tried it. I'm like, I actually like trust myself to make good decisions. And I don't think God cares if I have a drink now and then.
Is that where your heart's at? Is your heart and Moscow Mule like in conflict? No, you're still a loving, giving, person.
This says nothing
that
about who I am as a person. And I also started to realize that, like, without garments as well, I'm like, I am still the exact same person.
Yeah. There's a lot of guilt, though, that does go with
so much guilt and so much shame ingrained in it. From like when I was 8 years old, I was told that 8 years old is the age of accountability in Mormonism. So I was told, you're accountable now for all your sins. And if you don't do everything right, then you're not going to be with your family forever. So when you tell an 8-year-old that they're going to be separated from their family if they don't follow a specific set of rules, that's terrifying. Because for an 8-year-old, like, they can't survive on their own. Their family is their world. So I had so much ingrained, not just shame, but fear as well. Like, if I make these decisions outside of Mormonism, I'm going to lose my family. And as an adult, I was able to look at that differently, but I realized I still had that like ingrained super, super, super deep fear.
Those tapes don't just go away. Like I said, there's no way to erase them. You might know common sense says, you know what I mean? Like, but you still, your body reacts to that thought, to that feeling, to that emotion.
Yeah.
Regardless if you can tell yourself, no, wait a minute. We've already told ourselves that this is not.
Yes.
Wait. I have to go. Okay. Oh, yes, that's right. I have to tell myself over and over. And sometimes it's like such basic stuff to somebody else, but I'm like, I have to remind myself sometimes, like, wait, you're not fat for real. And you're not going to get fat in one day if you eat this, or you're not going to lose all your muscle if you go 3 days without working out.
Give yourself rest.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, it's
when
so
those messages have been so ingrained in you, it takes a lot of effort. I mean, it's been a few years and I don't feel like any guilt or shame about it now. But for the first little bit, I had to like constantly remind myself, I am not a bad person because I had a matcha this morning. I'm not a bad person because I wore a tank top. I'm not a bad person because I drank some alcohol.
Right. I'm glad that you've come to that part, and I'm sure your journey is still continuing, and I'm sure you're still learning a lot, and this is part of it. There's so many people out there that still need to hear this message for themselves. I personally feel like if you love the church and it works for you, I wouldn't suggest anybody stop, because if that's working for you, great, right? But if you're not feeling whole, or if there's something in you that's like questioning something, it should be okay to seek that out and not say, just go home and pray on it.
And that's where I have problems with the organization itself, is because there isn't space for people to say, no, this doesn't work for me, and that be okay. Like, if it doesn't work for you, you're not going to be with your family forever. And that's like where I kind of start to have problems with like the organization. Because I think you're right. Like, if it works for an individual, that's wonderful, but it's not fair for the individuals that it doesn't work for. Like me, it really did not work for. Right. To feel so trapped in a really inauthentic and scary. Like, for me, it was a really scary place to be, because of the messaging that they give to the people that it works for and the people that it doesn't work for.
Maybe they'll have a new revelation and it'll start getting a little closer aligned.
I mean, they have to, because I feel like a lot of people are leaving, and
The younger generation is, you know,
No, they don't put up with shit.
no, they don't. They have access to YouTube, all those things, and then they ask questions, and then being told go home and pray about it is just not enough.
Yeah, it's not going to cut it.
Yeah, yeah. Was that the hardest thing that you've gone to counseling for and you've thought about? Are there anything else? Is there anything else?
The hardest thing that I've gone through is like I've recently gone no contact with my parents because I discovered there is a lot more severe abuse going on than even I knew about, and it had been kept secret from me. And that was like the hardest thing that I've had to go through, is making the decision to cut my parents out of my life because I realized they weren't safe people for my children. And that was really, really hard to go through. I actually, when this happened, it was a year ago that I found out. I thought I was done therapy at that point, and I had stopped for like a month, and then all this stuff came out.
It came out like in your thoughts, you started to remember it, or it came out
someone came forward to me.
Okay.
About abuse that had happened. And it was, I mean, I tend to believe people when they come forward about abuse, but it was very reliable with someone that I trust. And also it didn't shock me so much as validate a lot of feelings and suspicions that I had for a long time. So at that point, I felt very, very blindsided that like my parents would know these things and allow my children to still be around them. Like, I guess I'm being kind of
it's okay.
Cryptic,
you're
but
not wanting to like say names or things or hurt anybody else in this podcast, but your children were in position of
and there's like
danger.
No, for me, there's like no forgiveness for that. Maybe there will be one day, but right now when my kids are little, there's like no forgiveness for putting my children at risk. And I always like had a very, very strong mother bear gut instincts to protect my children. So they were never, ever alone with this person. And I had very strict boundaries in place. But the fact that, I'll just say it was my dad. Someone came forward that my dad had been abusing them. And my mom had known about it for 10 years, so since my first daughter was born. Wow. And she chose not to tell us to protect our children. So when that came out, it was like I contacted them to say, you're not welcome in my life at all anymore. Don't reach out, basically, was what I said. That was the hardest thing that I've had to go through.
Well, I don't think that it's had to go through. I think you still are going through it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a loss. It's not just like hard to hear that was happening, but it's a loss of your family.
Yeah. Like,
and it for good reason, but still that's been severed.
Yeah.
There's no repairing that.
It's
really
like, sucks. It's like really, really crappy to know that your own mother would put your children at risk and would like put her relationship with abuser above her relationship with her own children. It's pretty shitty to like just see that so clearly. Like her actions speak very loudly that she would choose the abuser over her own children. And I'm not saying she hasn't gone through a lot that might have put her in a place that maybe that's the only decision that she can make with the tools that she has. But it was really, really, that set me back a lot in my therapy. To that point, my therapy the goal was to have a healthy and manageable relationship with my parents, the most peaceful relationship that I could have, knowing that the people that they were. And then after that point, it was like, okay, how do I cope with the loss of I'm not going to have my parents? It's even if your parents aren't good people, you still love them and you still want them to be in your life.
I always, my mom's been sober for the first time in my life that I've known or seen or heard or felt for a little over a year, maybe a year and a half now. And I was starting to get hope, that like we were actually going to have a real relationship and she was going to be on my side and on my team and show me love. And I didn't say that out loud to anybody because it was like, I hate to say stuff that I think then it won't happen. You know, I didn't even want to like start believing it because if it didn't happen, I'd be disappointed.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I did my show,
that's so hard because that's like your like inner child like still wants to have hope for that connection.
I want her to be like, I love you so much. And she's going to go to bat for me for anything like I would for my daughter. And it's basically, I've raised my daughter the exact opposite that I was raised. And it was almost intentional. Like, what would my mom do? Okay, I'll do the opposite.
Yes.
And I feel like I could have been such a better mom, but my daughter's like grateful and she feels like, you know, she doesn't have any complaints.
This is what my perspective is because I don't think any parent is going to be perfect. I'm sure that my kids will come to me with things that I did that hurt them or traumatized them in some way.
Yeah.
But for me, it would make the world of difference for my parents to just acknowledge this is what we did wrong and this is what we're doing to repair it. And we also are sorry for the way that we hurt you because we didn't know how. Like, to me, that would
be amazing.
That's enough. Like, that's my
but they won't even
my dad's
admit
not
it,
going to be in my life ever, no matter. No, well, they've admitted it and then unadmitted it, and I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So same with my mom. So she heard my podcast. And she told me I was a liar. Every little thing was a lie. Yeah. But I had got her to admit to all of those things in the last so many, you know, like especially since she's been sober. I'm like, Mom, okay, you need to stop pretending like you took me to brownies and that like there was all these things in our life when you weren't even there.
Yeah.
You know, and she's like, okay. And then we would get in public and she'd go, remember we did? And I'm like, none of that happened. I don't remember any of that. I don't remember you in my life. And so now when I came forward and just told my story, it wasn't even about her. It was about my dysfunction. You know, she wants to sue me. She says she's taking me to court for defamation.
That's what my mom hinted at in her last email. I don't have contact with her, but she sends emails. She was like, I'm like, well, you know, for it to be defamation, it has to be untrue. Right? Like,
I'm like, this.
Do you really want to go to court about this? Because it's not going to work out in your favor. I can just tell you that right now.
100%. Don't waste your money on an attorney.
Yeah. And I think it's just a scare tactic. I think it's a manipulation tactic to say things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted my mom to say, I'm so sorry. That was I love you so much. And like, we have a different life now.
I feel like that's so easy for me to do with my kids. And I feel like even my kids come to me right now and be like, and we'll be like, Mom, that really hurt my feelings when you talk to me in that way. And I'll be like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Like, I do not want you to feel that way. And you're right. I was a little impatient and tired, and that was my fault. That was not your fault. How can I support you and make you feel loved right now? And that's like, to me, that's what I want to do that for my kids. I'm not embarrassed that I'm not perfect and I mess up.
Yeah.
I want them to like, know that's okay, but I am always going to try and show up for them, going to love them no matter what. And I'm going to validate like their pain, and I'm willing to make their meaningful changes.
And you're going to hear them.
Yeah. Yes. Even if there's something that I think I'm 100% right on, if they come back to me and they're like, Mom, no, that really hurt my feelings, I'm going to listen to them and I'll change my mind. Like
I'll help them understand where I was coming from, and then they'll get like
we're gonna have a conversation.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so.
That's all I could ask for from my parents.
Well, you're doing a great job as a mommy. You are a good mommy bear. Yeah.
Thank you.
A lot of what we have gone through, and that's why I like this show, and it's not where I'm selling something or trying, you know what I mean? It's where I'm trying to say we have gotten to where we are, but we've gone through so much and we've learned to be so much better. And like, do I regret my childhood? Do I regret any of it? No. If it would have been a little different, would I be a little different now? Yes. Yeah. But I am okay with who I am now.
Yeah.
Right? I'm good. Good. I'm healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that. I feel like I would like things to be different, obviously, but at the same time, I love the person that I've become, which is a huge thing for me to be able to say, because I definitely didn't feel like that growing up, but I love the person that I've become because I've had to work through so much. Like I had to work really, really hard for my self-esteem and for my, like, even my relationship with Chris when we were first married. I feel like we had really unhealthy communication patterns, and we have both like put in such an effort to grow and change and be better communicators with each other. And I feel like if I didn't have the experiences that I did, then we wouldn't have together put in all that effort to create like this beautiful life that we have.
And it's just, and I don't want to say it's just starting, but there's so much left.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. It does kind of in a way feel like it's just starting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I'm not worried. I'm not.
Yeah.
When you take all of that extra chatter in your mind and you can like quiet that because you're not having to talk to yourself about every situation, it opens up so much space for peace and joy. And you're like, I actually want to get out of bed for the first time in my life, you know, and I'm excited. And I used to go to bed at 8:00 at night. I was depressed almost all my life. I could sleep for weeks. I could be in bed. And now I don't want the day to end. Like,
yes, it's such a good feeling.
It is.
And I almost feel like those low points make the high points like that much better because you really appreciate it. Yes.
So true. So true. So if you were born a millionaire, it doesn't seem like, you know, it's not the highlight for you.
There's definitely something to like the idea that there's more value in something that you fought for than something that you were just given.
Yeah, something that you've earned for sure.
Yeah.
And that's why good parents always make sure that they don't just pay for your way. You go to college, but there's a little skin in the game, right?
Yes.
You have to have felt it a little bit, you know, or whatever the situation may be. Like if my parents gave me a car, which that never happened, it might not be clean, but if I bought it myself, I would probably clean it a lot.
Yeah. Yes.
So, well, I'm really glad that you came on. I really am. I was looking forward to this for weeks since you said yes. And I'm like,
it's been so nice.
And mostly because I couldn't wait to get to know you more.
Aw.
So the last couple of times that we've caught up, I'm like, there's so much there. There's so much substance. And I know I've gone through counseling for 7 years to undo the dysfunction that I had in my life.
That's so much work. But
I loved it.
So powerful. Yes.
You could feel it.
Yeah,
I would leave
it's so
there
empowering.
Feeling like I had more to offer the world.
Yes.
And my kids would not be who they are had I not had that counseling. I would not be here. There's just a lot that helped. Some people have mixed
me
opinions.
A few years ago would have said no if you asked me
right?
to be on a podcast.
When you told me you're like, I don't know if I can, if I'm like, Rachel, come on.
Well,
I can't believe that.
That's nice of you.
Well, is there anything else you would like to share?
I don't think so.
Yeah, you did so good. I'm so grateful for you
You're so easy to talk
up.
to.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm genuinely like hearing, you know, what's made you who you are today. And, you know, being a social media influencer, that was interesting to me too, because I don't know what other people think about social media influencers, but isn't it hard?
It is
for
a
you.
lot
It
of
was
work.
a little bit kind of came natural because you started so early.
Yes,
but I can't imagine anybody today just being like, "I'm going to be a social media influencer." Like,
it's
on my
so
board.
competitive because it's so oversaturated. Yeah. So I feel really lucky that I accidentally started it when I did, because it is really, really hard to grow and do that now. But yeah, it's definitely a lot more work than people think it is.
I love it. I love it. You're beautiful. Keep it up. Right now, I know you're going through real estate school. You finished faster than anybody I've ever known.
I just met with the school this morning and got like my certificate so I can go take the course, the quiz, or the test.
I love it. Okay, so you did it in like 2 months or less.
I guess. I don't remember when I started.
It was not even 2 months. That's the fastest anybody has gone through real estate school and got their course. So you get to take your test.
I'm hoping to take it next week.
Already?
Yeah.
Oh my heavens. Yeah, I like to say that. It's a
Utah thing
It's a
to
Utah
say.
thing. I had a girlfriend come out and she's up at the register and she's cussing and I'm like, oh my heck. Every time she said it, oh my heavens. She's like, what are you saying? I'm like,
I love it.
I go, it's an inside joke.
With myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are the best.
And she goes, we cuss. We're from California. And I go, well, I'm a Utah now.
I'm going the opposite way since I moved to Utah.
I still have a whole plethora of way I can use the F word. Don't get me wrong. But anyway, yeah. So congratulations on passing the school. You did that super fast. I know you'll pass your test quickly. Me too. And I've already offered you a spot on my team. I would love to work with you.
So flattered and so excited to work with you.
I think we could sell some $1 million houses. Yeah, lots of them.
Let's do it. I think we could.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have a great podcast and great social media following, I have a feeling. So awesome. Well, I'm going to give you a hug.
Yeah.